But speaking of other leagues and such, we got the Call of Duty League is in full swing with the content creators have been making their mark. Today, to join us in the studio is one of those creators and host of his own CDL podcast. It's Anthony Kingdom Soldier Hogan.
Hey, what's
up, guys?
What's going on, Anthony? How you doing?
Doing good. So let's get into it. Let's start with you and your career. You recently went from pastor to creating esports content full-time and working with G Fuel. Talk to us about this transition, because from going to God to guns, that's interesting. It's crazy.
See, you're already getting me in trouble. It was actually not that bad of a transition. When I moved from esports, there was a time in my life where I was spending 30 to 50 hours a week on my podcast, on my videos and content, and then, of course, just playing Call of Duty, especially in Black Ops 2 days. I mean, I would get on and play 8s for hours. And so when I made the transition to the church world full-time from there, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I wound up running my church's YouTube channel. I wound up running the social media. And then as the executive pastor, I was responsible for the broadcast and how things looked on the outside of the church and the marketing. And so it actually wasn't that difficult of a transition. I just missed playing video games as much as I could. And the transition back to esports and to gaming, that one was a little bit more difficult. But it was only difficult in that I needed to secure some type of a career or meaningful income within the world of gaming and esports in order for me to maintain my consistency, grinding my Twitch channel and my YouTube channel and making my podcast weekly. And that has happened with G Fuel. And so I'm really excited for everything that's been happening in my life over the last month. And I'm excited to look back and see how much it changed my life at the end of this year.
Well, let's also look back to what you were saying. There's a little bit of a rough patch during that transition, going back into covering esports and gaming. But the Call of Duty community really stepped it up and helped big time with it. Was that confirmation that you made the right decision?
So I'm going to say no, but I'll explain why. I think that at the end of this year, this is the year 2020. And everybody says hindsight's 2020, or you have 2020 vision. You can see clearly. At the end of this year, I hope to look back on January and February and the decisions that I'm making career-wise and that I've made to commit myself to doing consistent content, partnering back up with my producer Goalie. I'm hoping that that proves to be the right decision. Right now, I honestly don't know. I'm right at the front end of it. What it does confirm is that the Call of Duty community is elite, is that when someone is in trouble, when someone's down and out, even though people have called us toxic, we pull together and we do what needs to be done to take care of our own. And I learned, and what was confirmed for me, is that my family extends way beyond the four walls of my house and out to my Call of Duty esports community. And so I love all you guys that are watching. Thank you guys so much.
Oh my God, that was beautiful, man. Those are great words. I could tell he was a pastor. Speaking about Call of Duty, right? Your podcast is focused on Call of Duty esports, and you recently had Attach on the show. What angle are you taking with the podcast, and what do your listeners want to listen to? What do your listeners resonate with?
Okay, so what I've always been known for is this kind of like objective and balanced opinion. You know, even when people disagree with me, they're like, but I get where you're coming from. And so with my podcast, I'm hoping to balance like really thought-provoking interviews with conversational analytics, I guess, or analysis, like conversational analysis. Like I want to talk about events and what's coming up and KDs and all that kind of stuff and who's better than who, but I want to do it in a way where it's a conversation and it's thought-provoking, where people leave the podcast like, I didn't just learn about Call of Duty, I learned something about life, you know, and that's just my hope, and it's who I am. It's what I live and breathe, and my show kind of allows me to do that.
Yes, your show allows them to learn about life, but also people learned a lot about the teams, the highs and lows in the 3 events for the Call of Duty League. What are some of your impressions of the league so far, and what do you think they are doing well, and what do you believe they need to work on?
Number one, I'm very impressed. I think that the overall storylines and the storytelling that the league has committed to, in my opinion, and some of it that we don't even see. I don't think everybody reads the articles that are written on the Call of Duty League website, but they're exceptional. And they really tell you more about each of the teams. And the league is committed to telling the stories of all of the teams. And you can see that the owners and the organizations are committed to, on Twitter, on YouTube. They've all created their own YouTube channels and they put out content consistently. And we're learning about these players. And that's what separates Call of Duty from all the other esports, is our storylines. And I think the CDL has done a great job of telling that story. I think the format also is a win. Although some people might not agree, with 4 teams not being at every event, like right now, we have to wait until Chicago to see Chicago and FaZe face off against each other. And we all thought it might happen this last weekend. And so that's another storyline. And I think that it works for us. I think it builds momentum and it builds viewership. And so I'm very happy. I think if I had to say anything that could be done better, maybe more exposure for the challengers, for the path to pro guys that are coming up that are trying to become pros in the league. Figure out a way to give them more exposure. It's a big problem, but it's definitely hard to solve, I guess. And I guess I'd say that was it. Maybe move the hype battles to Saturday would be my other thing instead of before grand finals.
So speaking about 2 of the best teams, we have the Huntsmen and Atlanta FaZe, like you mentioned earlier. They're 2 of the top teams, and they've had yet to play each other. What do you think of these 2 teams and performances, and who do you think will win when they eventually play someday against each other?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question.
It's a difficult one. You don't know if it's going to happen 3 weeks from now.
No, there's 2 questions that rotate in the Call of Duty community. Are these championships, and who's going to win between FaZe and Chicago? Those are the 2 big questions. And I would say when they face off, because it better happen in Chicago when they're in the same group with the New York Subliners and the London Royal Ravens. It better happen. They better face off against each other in Chicago. But that's a month away. We got to wait so long, or a month and a half to get there. Honestly, I'm impressed with both teams. I think the Huntsmen just weren't on their game this past weekend, and so we didn't get to see the collision that we all were hoping for. Right now, today, I would have FaZe winning that match. They've showed composure. They've showed that they can turn around by pulling off a reverse sweep to get into the grand finals when Chicago was swept out of the grand finals, out in the semis. And so I just think they've showed us consistency. They're the only team that hasn't lost yet. It's kind of hard for me to give it to anybody else.
Now, before we let you go, real quick, you talked about Solange, you talked about teams, talk about the best teams. Who is your favorite team?
The Seattle Surge. I am a Seattle dad. I'm a Seattle dad myself. I know the team has had some rough roads, but I'm believing that they're going to drown them out. And even if what we do this year is put on the best Homestead event that anybody puts on this year, with everything they're talking about with challengers, maybe even streaming it. Bob Morris is probably going to be mad at me for mentioning that, but he's tweeted it. So I'm a Seattle fan, and I really have I've been DMing and telling everybody I'll do whatever it takes to help that event be successful. Even if I got to sell tickets. I want the homestand for Seattle to be amazing.
Put on for your city.
Yes, put on for your city. Same way we put on for New York, but we got to see them pick it up a little bit over there with the Subliners.
Yeah, same.
You know what? At least they're still performing better than the Knicks are sometimes.
Wow.
All right, so Anthony, thank you so much for joining our show today. We look forward to hearing more from you, your podcast, and just the Call of Duty League overall.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. All right, everyone.